You need to hear this. It's rigged. Buckle up and don't blink, because what Kevin O'Leary just said changes the entire game for Bitcoin and Ethereum holders going into the next phase of this market. This is a veteran capital allocator openly warning that the rules are being rewritten in real time. This is going to be a mind-blowing update, so I need you, the amazing viewers, kick back, get comfortable, smash the like and subscribe button, so this video reaches other legends just like you. Now, let's get right into the video. Institutions are not coming to save your favorite altcoin. They are not here to gamble. They are here to deploy size, and size only moves into assets that survive regulation, scrutiny, and liquidity stress. O'Leary's message was blunt for a reason. The market is about to be cleansed, not gently, but aggressively. When regulation meets capital, speculation gets wiped out first. If you are positioned wrong when that happens, it will feel like the market is rigged against you, because in many ways, it is. This is huge. Kevin O'Leary didn't mince words when he said institutions are asking one simple question, and it's the only question that matters. What do we actually need to own? Not what's exciting, not what's trending, not what has a cool narrative, but what captures the majority of crypto's returns with the least regulatory and operational risk. His answer was devastatingly simple: Bitcoin and Ethereum, nothing else. Data shows that owning just those two assets captures roughly 90% of the market's meaningful volatility and upside over time. That realization alone is a death sentence for thousands of speculative tokens that only existed because liquidity was abundant and rules were unclear. This is not a moral judgment, it is capital efficiency. Big money does not need 10,000 coins, it needs two that work. What makes this moment different is that regulation is no longer theoretical. The Clarity Act moving through the system is not bearish. It is selective. Regulation does not kill markets. It kills weak participants. Once institutions are allowed, even encouraged, to allocate a small percentage the same way they allocate to gold, they will not spray capital everywhere. They will concentrate. That concentration effect is brutal. Capital flowing into Bitcoin and Ethereum does not just lift them, it starves everything else. That is why O'Leary called it a cleansing. When compliance, custody, and transparency become requirements, speculation without substance dies quickly. This is how markets mature, and maturation always feels violent to those positioned for chaos instead of structure. Another critical shift O'Leary highlighted is something most retail investors missed entirely. Stablecoins changed the game. When stablecoins became legally recognized payment rails backed by short-duration US treasuries, the world realized something important. You could move value across borders cheaply and efficiently without Bitcoin acting as the transactional layer. That realization pulled one narrative away from Bitcoin, but it did not kill Bitcoin. It refined its role. Bitcoin shifted further into a savings and reserve asset, not a payments network. That clarity matters because institutions love clearly defined roles. Confusion repels capital. Clarity attracts it. This transition did not weaken Bitcoin long term, it hardened it. The idea that markets are rigged usually comes from misunderstanding how liquidity behaves in uncertainty. In risk-off environments, capital does not spread out. It compresses. Quality wins, breadth loses. Bitcoin and Ethereum have the deepest liquidity, the largest networks, and the strongest institutional infrastructure. That is not debatable anymore. 5 years ago, people said all crypto would die together in bear markets. That is no longer how institutions think. They differentiate. Fidelity's leadership openly refers to Bitcoin as the gold standard of crypto, not because it is perfect, but because it has survived every stress test thrown at it. Survival is the most underrated asset in finance. The long-term data reinforces this in a way emotions cannot override. Holding Bitcoin for short periods is volatile, brutal even, but stretch the time frame and the probability of loss collapses. Over 3 years, negative returns effectively disappear historically. Over 5 and 10 years, they vanish entirely. Institutions understand this math. They do not trade daily candles. They allocate to time. That is why Bitcoin fits into a savings hierarchy narrative for them. It is not about flipping tops. It is about durability. Ethereum is entering that same conversation from a different angle, not just as an asset, but as infrastructure. Ethereum's latest Fusaka upgrade quietly changed the economics of the entire ecosystem, and most people have not caught up yet. This upgrade did not just improve scalability and efficiency, it fundamentally reinforced Ethereum's position as the base layer landlord. By adjusting blob pricing and enforcing a reserve cost for data availability, Ethereum effectively raised the rent on Layer 2 networks. That matters because it resolves the argument that all value accrues to L2S. No, L2S are tenants. Ethereum owns the land. When usage grows, rent grows. Institutions understand this immediately. Owning ETH is owning the base economic layer, not just a token. This landlord-tenant dynamic is why Ethereum is increasingly attractive to serious capital. Every successful application built on Ethereum feeds value back to the base layer. Prediction markets, tokenized assets, decentralized finance, stablecoin settlement, all of it ultimately relies on Ethereum's security and availability. When you see platforms like Polymarket gaining mainstream traction, you are not just seeing a cool app. You are seeing Ethereum quietly monetizing real-world usage. People argue about narratives while value flows through the base layer. That disconnect is where opportunity lives before it becomes obvious. The conversation around XRP, ETFs, and inflows adds another layer to this story. While Bitcoin and Ethereum are the clear blue chips, institutions do experiment at the edges once a framework is established. XRP ETF inflows continuing for weeks signal something important. Capital is willing to explore regulated exposure to specific use cases once the core allocation is set. That does not contradict O'Leary's point. It confirms it. First comes the foundation, then selective risk. Without the foundation, nothing else gets funded. Bitcoin and Ethereum passed that test. Others are still trying. Education is another quiet signal people ignore. When major exchanges invest in beginner-friendly materials, children's books, and financial literacy, they are not doing it for fun. They are preparing for generational onboarding. That only happens when an industry expects to exist long-term. You do not educate for bubbles, you educate for permanence. The next wave of users will not start with obscure speculation. They will start with the names they trust and hear everywhere. That reinforces network effects. And network effects are how moats are built in finance. Even emerging networks like BitSoar highlight how early-stage ecosystems grow, but they also highlight why most will never reach Bitcoin or Ethereum status. Explosive early growth does not equal institutional suitability. Institutions need liquidity, governance clarity, and survivability. Many networks may thrive, but that does not mean they belong in a conservative allocation model. This distinction matters because retail often confuses innovation with investability. Institutions do not. They separate the two ruthlessly. When O'Leary says buckle up, he is not predicting a smooth ride higher. He is warning that volatility will increase as capital rotates out of speculation and into structure. That process creates winners and losers simultaneously. It feels unfair because it punishes enthusiasm and rewards patience. Markets are not designed to be fair. They are designed to allocate capital efficiently. When rules solidify, efficiency increases, and inefficiency gets destroyed. That is what this phase represents. The reason this feels rigged is because the game has shifted from narratives to numbers. Data, liquidity, and compliance are now the referees. Bitcoin and Ethereum dominate on all three fronts. That does not mean they only go up. It means they survive when others don't. Survival precedes outperformance. This is the lesson institutions learned decades ago in every asset class. Crypto is not exempt from that reality. It is finally entering it. If you zoom out, this is not bearish for crypto. It is bullish for the right crypto. A maturing market always narrows before it expands again. First, the weeds are cleared, then the strongest trees grow taller. Bitcoin and Ethereum are not just benefiting from hype, they are benefiting from inevitability. Capital needs somewhere to go that regulators can tolerate and institutions can explain to committees. That funnel is narrow, and it is narrowing further. So when Kevin O'Leary says it's rigged, what he really means is the amateur hour is ending. The market is growing up, and grown-up markets reward discipline over dreams. Buckle up does not mean panic. It means awareness. If you understand where capital is flowing and why, you stop fighting the tide and start positioning with it. Bitcoin and Ethereum are no longer just part of crypto. They are becoming the backbone of it.